You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and I have to start with something that should have been on my radar, but wasn't. It's not my fault that it wasn't on my radar. This entity did a terrible job of publicizing that it was going to do this. But it is a big deal. I do love Hall of Faming, as you know. So I have to start with it. The Pro Football Hall of Fame released their 15 finalists for the class of 2021. Now, the way it works is this group of 15 will be narrowed down to 5. And those 5 guys, along with possibly the finalists in the senior category, the contributor category, and the coach category, will make up the class of 2021. Like I said, though, the Pro Football Hall of Fame did a terrible job of publicizing this. I had no idea that they were going to be doing this yesterday. The way I found out was I followed the Pro Football Hall of Fame on Twitter, and I just saw them tweeting out, "Congratulations, Jared Allen, Rondé Barber, Tony Baselli, etc., etc. You're all finalists." And it's like, okay, cool. I guess we're doing that tomorrow. Awesome. I mean, I'm sorry, but you've got to do a better job of publicizing it. It's a big deal when the Baseball Hall of Fame announces their ballot. It should be the same thing for all the Hall of Fames. Hockey, it's next to impossible to find anything. Football, you've got to do a better job. Basketball's a joke anyway. You take a look at the list of semifinalists for the class of 2021. They're names that no one's ever heard of. I've never heard of some of those names. I mean, you've just got to do a better job of publicizing when you're gonna announce the 15 finalists if you're the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's a big deal. It's the highest honor in football. So here's how I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna tell you the 5 guys who I'd vote for. Then I'll go through the guys who just missed the cut. Then I'll tell you the guys who I wouldn't vote for in a million years. And then I'll go over the senior finalist, the contributor finalist, and the coach finalist. The 5 guys who I'd vote for are Alan Faneca, Calvin Johnson, Peyton Manning, Richard Seymour, and Charles Woodson. Faneca, it's been a long time coming for him. He's been a finalist 6 times. This is his 6th year of eligibility. I don't know what's taken him so long to get over the hump. This guy was insanely durable, only missed one game his whole career. 9-time Pro Bowler. 6-time first-team All-Pro. And if you're a believer in the eye test, which I am, Faneca is an easy choice. I remember him with the Steelers. He reminded you of Mike Webster out there. That's how dominant he was. Making holes for Jerome Bettis. Giving Ben Roethlisberger time in the pocket. What he did as the starting left guard for the Jets in Mark Sanchez's rookie year, 2009, can't be overstated. That whole offensive line was great. DeBrickashaw Ferguson, Faneca, Nick Mangold, Brandon Moore, and Damian Woody. You'd be hard-pressed to say that anyone was better than anyone else, or anyone was worse than anyone else on that line. There were no weak links. But Faneca was an incredibly integral part of that 2009 team. One of my favorite seasons in Jets history. He also has a Super Bowl ring. The Pittsburgh Steelers won Super Bowl 40. I don't know what more you want from an offensive lineman. Faneca needs to be in the Hall of Fame. Calvin Johnson was actually kind of tough for me. And I'm going to tell you why. You take a look at the ballot. You've got 3 great wide receivers there. Torrey Holt, Johnson, and Reggie Wayne. All 3 of those guys should be in the Hall of Fame. And since I'm only limited to 5 guys, I really couldn't justify picking multiple wide receivers. If this was like the Baseball Hall of Fame, where you could have a maximum of 10 guys on the ballot, very easy choice. But I was ultimately left deciding who was more deserving. Holt, Johnson, or Wayne. They should all be Hall of Famers. Unfortunately, I had to pick one of the 3. Usually for the skill positions, I like to look at total body of work. For other positions, I look at dominance, not the skill positions. And in terms of total body of work, Johnson is behind Wayne and Holt. In receiving yards, he's behind them. In catches, he's behind them. In Super Bowls, he's behind them. I mean, that's just fact. But I had to amend my rule for Megatron. Megatron was just so blasted dominant that he's ultimately more deserving than Wayne and Holt. Calvin Johnson only played 9 years in the NFL. In 7 of those seasons, he was a 1,000-yard receiver. In all those years, he had at least 70 catches. He was by far and away the best player on those Lions teams. I understand that's not a high bar to clear, since with Johnson, the Lions never won a playoff game. But they made the playoffs twice. And for a wide receiver to be the best player on his team, that's impressive. I can't think of a team today that has a wide receiver as their best player. Johnson was a 6-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro. Megatron deserves to be in. The reality is he made more of an impact than Holt and Wayne. If you want to put Johnson in as a slam dunk no-doubter, that's fine. If you want to put Holt and Wayne in instead of Johnson, that's fine. This was tough for me. But in terms of dominance, which is what I use for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, more than any other metric, granted, usually not for wide receivers, but for Megatron, you have to make an exception. You just do. I mean, for God's sake, this guy has the record for most receiving yards in a single season with 1,964. He's deserving of being a first ballot Hall of Famer. Maybe there are some guys who would want to have him wait. Put some of the guys in who have had to wait a long time, but if you're as dominant as Megatron was, I have no problem putting you in immediately. The rare Lions first-round wide receiver draft pick to work out deserves to be in the Hall of Fame this year. Speaking of first ballot Hall of Famers, you don't need me to tell you about Peyton Manning. He was the best quarterback in the league for a period of time. When he retired, he had the most passing yards in NFL history, the most touchdowns in NFL history, 14-time Pro Bowler, 7-time first-team All-Pro, 3-time second-team All-Pro, 5-time MVP, Super Bowl 41 MVP, 2-time Super Bowl winner. Some Jets fans may not like him because they don't like that he went back to Tennessee. If he didn't go back to school for his senior year, he would have been the first overall pick in 1997 by the Jets. Instead, they traded down with the Rams so they could take Orlando Pace. And Manning was a driving force behind the Jets hiring Adam Gase. But the simple fact is, Peyton Manning had one of the best careers in NFL history. The knock on him early was that he couldn't win a big game. I remember the 2002 wildcard game where the Jets destroyed him, 41-0. I'm 5 years old at this point, and my mom wants me to do something, and I say to my mom, "Mom, this is Peyton Manning we're talking about, and the Jets are destroying him. I am watching this game." Manning proved all the people wrong who said he couldn't win a big game. Hopefully down the line, Lamar Jackson does the same thing. It kills me to say that Richard Seymour should be a Hall of Famer, but look, he should be. He was arguably the best player on those 2000s Patriots defenses. Either him or Ty Law. You'd have to really think about it. Junior Seau was there for a little bit. It's closer than you'd think, but Seymour was a fantastic player. 3-time Super Bowl winner, 3-time first-team All-Pro, 2-time second-team All-Pro, 7-time Pro Bowler. What gets him in is the 3 Super Bowls. I like Super Bowls. And you combine that with the dominance that you saw every game Seymour played, whether he was a Patriot or Raider, you've got to put Seymour in the Hall of Fame. And speaking of dominance, you'd be hard-pressed to find a more dominant defensive player than Charles Woodson. Defensive Rookie of the Year, tied for the 5th most interceptions in NFL history with 65, 3-time first-team All-Pro, 9-time Pro Bowler, won a Super Bowl with the Packers. He's tied for the most defensive touchdowns in a career in history with 13. And this I didn't know. He intercepted a pass in all of his seasons in the NFL. He played 18 seasons. The record is held by Darrell Green with 19. So Woodson was really close to tying that record. That's a record that you don't think about as being hard, but then when you really stop and think about it, it's like, wow. To play almost 20 seasons and get an interception in all of those seasons, that takes skill. You can get a lot of interceptions, but good luck playing 18 seasons. Or you can hang around for a while, but good luck getting an interception all those seasons. Woodson was an insanely dominant player. You have to put him in the Hall of Fame. Now for the guys who just missed the cut. I'm not saying that these guys shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame, but there were people more deserving than them that needed to get in first. The first guy there is Jared Allen. 5-time Pro Bowler, 4-time first-team All-Pro. He has 136 sacks. That's the 12th most sacks in NFL history. Was Allen a dominant player? The answer is yes. Should he be in the Hall of Fame? The answer is yes. But he wasn't better than Richard Seymour. He wasn't better than Faneca. He wasn't better than Woodson. He wasn't better than Manning. He wasn't better than Johnson. You can't put him in over any of those guys. He'll get in the Hall of Fame. He just needs to wait at least one more year. Torrey Holt has the body of work that I love in a Hall of Famer. The 16th most receiving yards in NFL history. 7-time Pro Bowler. Was on the Greatest Show on Turf. Made an All-Pro team. This guy had 8 straight seasons where he had over 1,100 receiving yards. But I just didn't want to put in 2 wide receivers in this stacked class. There are a lot of guys on this ballot that should get in the Hall of Fame. If I had more votes, I'd put Holt in easily. But unfortunately, I'm limited by the maximum of 5 rule. It's a rule that should be amended. I understand wanting to spread the wealth through the years, but if you have a backlog of deserving candidates, that's not helping anyone. Next year is actually shaping up to be a pretty good group of first-timers. Andre Johnson, Anquan Bolden, DeMarcus Ware, Devin Hester, Jake Long, Nick Mangold, Robert Mathis, Steve Smith, and Vince Wilfork. I can make a case for all of those guys to be in the Hall of Fame. I understand having a maximum, but you've gotta amend it. The next guy up is Zach Thomas, a guy who I remember seeing torture the Jets every time he played him. And he tortured a bunch of other teams too. You'd be hard-pressed to find a more versatile linebacker in the 2000s than Thomas. Yes, he got his tackles, but you could drop him into coverage, and he'd get interceptions, he could rush the quarterback, and he'd get sacks. He could do anything on the football field. Incredibly versatile player. 5-time first-team All-Pro, 2-time second-team All-Pro, 7-time Pro Bowler. Zach Thomas should be in the Hall of Fame. But again, there are just more deserving candidates than him. And Reggie Wayne, I hit on him earlier. He has the body of work that I love in a wide receiver. There is a nice sense of poetry to putting Manning in with Wayne, because the two of them were so fantastic together. And you can throw Marvin Harrison in there too, but Wayne did have some really good years with Manning and without Harrison. I'm not going to lie to you. That symmetry almost led me to putting in Wayne over Johnson. I just really like the idea of Manning and Wayne going in together, but I just couldn't do it. Again, Wayne wasn't as dominant as Johnson. Wayne has the body of work. 6-time Pro Bowler, won a Super Bowl, over 14,000 receiving yards, 82 touchdowns. There's no question that Reggie Wayne should be in the Hall of Fame. He's just gotta wait at least one more year, unfortunately. Now on to the 6 guys who I really don't think should be in the Hall of Fame. And I'll start with a guy who's right on the borderline. Rondé Barber. I remember watching Barber with the Buccaneers. I thought he was a really good player. And he is a guy who you could make the argument does pass the eye test. He had moments where he looked like a Hall of Famer. But then when you really stop and think about it, he's a slam dunk inductee to the Hall of Very Good, not the Hall of Fame. He wasn't as great in coverage as other corners were in that era. He got a lot of interceptions, but not a lot in totality. He's 47th on the all-time list. If we're putting Rondé Barber in the Hall of Fame because of his interceptions, we've got to put a lot of other players in. Guys like Eugene Robinson, Everson Walls, Eric Allen, and even a guy like Terrell Buckley all have more interceptions than Barber. I don't think of those guys as Hall of Famers. He was a great corner blitzer. One of the best corner blitzers in NFL history. But that doesn't get you in the Hall of Fame. 3-time All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler. Really good player. A career that I'd be really happy with if I was Barber. But he's Hall of Very Good. He's not Hall of Fame. The next guy up is Tony Baselli. A guy who's been a finalist 5 times. This is his 15th year of eligibility. Someone should get the hint that this guy isn't a Hall of Famer. Was Tony Baselli an incredibly dominant tackle? The answer is yes. He made 5 straight Pro Bowls, 3-time first-team All-Pro. Incredibly dominant player. But he doesn't have the longevity that you need to get into the Hall of Fame. He only played 7 seasons. He only played 91 games. That can't get you in the Hall of Fame. The reality is, Baselli was just too blasted injury prone. If he had stayed healthy, easy Hall of Famer. But part of being great is staying healthy. Baselli didn't do that. He's not a Hall of Famer. Leroy Butler is a Hall of Fame finalist for only the 2nd time. This is his 15th year of eligibility. And he's like Barber, had a really good career. 4-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All-Pro. Super Bowl 31, he was fantastic. He had 7 tackles and a sack. Was one of, if not the best defensive player on that Super Bowl winning Packers team. He just doesn't have the dominance for Hall of Fame. Really good safety, one of the best safeties of his era, just not a Hall of Famer. John Lynch is another guy who these voters should take the hint on. He's just not a Hall of Famer. This is his 9th year of eligibility. He's been a finalist 8 times. Not a Hall of Famer. Look, he played a really important role on those Buccaneers defenses. A really fun, hybrid role. Very versatile player. He made 9 Pro Bowls. And has done a great job with the 49ers. Maybe all of that combined gets you in the Hall of Fame, but here's my knock on him. What position did he play? He was really a safety. What are safeties supposed to do at the end of the day? Be good coverage guys. John Lynch was not a great coverage guy. He has a Super Bowl ring. Look, the guy's had a great career. A career that anyone would be proud of. But again, the one job of a safety is to play center field, come over the top, and deflect passes or intercept them. John Lynch was not good at that. That's part of the reason why he was used in that hybrid linebacker role. If you're going to go into the Hall of Fame as a safety, you've got to have more than 26 interceptions. The guy has over 1,000 tackles. Fantastic for a linebacker. Not a safety. I just can't put John Lynch in the Hall of Fame. Hall of Very Good, not Hall of Fame. Clay Matthews is a really interesting one. This is the former Brown and Falcon, not the former Packer. He's the former Packers' father. This is his 20th year of eligibility, and it's his first time being a finalist. Look, the guy was an Iron Man, played 19 seasons. When he retired, he had the 3rd most games played in NFL history. He's played more games at linebacker than anyone ever has. Played for some really good Browns teams. No, I didn't misspeak. With Matthews on the team, the Browns made 3 AFC title games. But only 4 Pro Bowls, less than 100 sacks. He's Hall of Very Good. He's not Hall of Fame. Sam Mills is an interesting candidate. The guy was undrafted coming out of Montclair State. And no NFL team would pick him up. He went to the USFL. Played 3 seasons there. Played well. Then went to the Saints. And put together some really good seasons. He was a 4-time Pro Bowler with them. When he went to the Panthers, he made another Pro Bowl. Made his only All-Pro team. Was the heart and soul of those early Panthers. And he played well in big games. The 1996 NFC title game, where the Panthers lost to the Packers, Mills had 5 tackles, 9 assists, and 1 interception. The thing is, though, he just doesn't have the dominance. He just doesn't have those peak years, you know? He was a nice player, really good player, but I don't even know if I'd put him in the Hall of Very Good. The USFL years hurt him, in my eyes. Did they help him prepare for the NFL? Yes. But I just don't think he's a Hall of Famer. This is his 19th year of eligibility, and it's only his 2nd time being a finalist. Someone should get the hint. Alright, now on to the other 3 finalists. The senior finalist is Drew Pearson, the contributor finalist is Bill Nunn, and the coach finalist is Tom Flores. I'll start with Pearson. Really good wide receiver for the Cowboys. Integral part of those great Cowboys teams from the mid to late 70s. Here's the thing, though. Only 1 Super Bowl, only 3 Pro Bowls, only 3 All-Pro teams, and when you look at the total body of work, it's just not there. He only has 7,802 receiving yards. The list of players that are ahead of him in that stat runs about a mile long. Hell, Golden Tate is ahead of him. Is Golden Tate a Hall of Famer? Is Emmanuel Sanders a Hall of Famer? Good career, nice guy, integral part of some good teams, but not a Hall of Famer. Bill Nunn isn't a household name. And that's okay. He was a behind-the-scenes guy. From 1970 to 1987, he was the Pittsburgh Steelers' assistant personnel director. From 1987 to 2014, he was a scout. It's okay if you don't know the name. Maybe you know his son. His son played Radio Raheem in Do the Right Thing. Really good movie. And I don't want to fight the power and say that his father shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. This guy has 6 Super Bowl rings. He was with the Steelers for 44 seasons. He had to be doing something right. The one thing that almost kept him out in my eyes was, do I want to put an assistant personnel director and scout in the Hall of Fame? But then I thought about it. Ed and Steve Sable are in the Hall of Fame. They're NFL films guys. Also, in 1966, Shorty Ray got in the Hall of Fame. He was the first ever supervisor of NFL officials. Did a lot to flesh out the rules of the game. Very important figure in NFL history. I'm not saying he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. In fact, I'm saying the opposite. Ray and the Sables should be in the Hall of Fame for their contributions to the game. So we have people in who weren't exactly in glamorous positions. If those guys can be in, none can be in. I have no problem with that whatsoever. As for Tom Flores, I really had to think about him for a long, long time. Here's a guy who, when you first look at his stats, you see someone with a 97-87 record. If the guy doesn't have 100 wins, how can he be a Hall of Famer? Well, he won 2 Super Bowls with the Raiders. And his win-loss percentage would look a lot better if he didn't go to the Seahawks. With the Raiders, he has a .610 winning percentage. With the Seahawks, .292. That brings his career winning percentage to .527. Look, Flores did not do a good job with the Seahawks. But he did a great job with the Raiders. He's one of only 13 coaches in NFL history to win multiple Super Bowls. Most of those guys are in the Hall of Fame. Not all of them. Mike Shanahan isn't. George Seifert isn't. I don't know if Tom Coughlin is eligible yet, but he isn't in. Bill Belichick will get in. He's just still coaching. It's an interesting argument. Does coaching multiple Super Bowl winners get you in the Hall of Fame? If you wanted to say yes to that, I'd be okay with it. If Tom Flores gets into the Hall of Fame, I'd have no problem with it. Ultimately, though, I have to say no. I don't think I'd vote for him. And the reason isn't even his fault. It's just that there are other coaches that we need to put in first. Guys like Dan Reeves, Chuck Knox, Tom Coughlin, and Dick Vermeil are all more deserving Hall of Famers than Flores. You combine all that with the underwhelming regular season record, I don't think 2 Super Bowls is enough. I don't think I'd vote for Flores. If he were to get in, again, I wouldn't get too bent out of shape. These types of finalists usually get in, but not always. And I don't think Flores should. Alright, so that's going to do it for Hall of Faming, but there's still more NFL news to talk about. The big news is that the Texans finally got their guy. They have coveted this guy for a really long time, and now he's coming over. The Texans hired Nick Caserio from the Patriots to be their GM. This guy is one of the most respected personnel guys in the NFL. He's been with the Patriots since 2001. And he's been with them in a variety of roles. He was a scout, director of personnel. In fact, for the perfect season, he was their wide receivers coach. He's an incredibly smart guy. The Texans have coveted him for years. When Brian Gaine was fired as Texans GM in 2019, the Texans really wanted to hire Caserio as their GM. The Patriots blocked it. They wouldn't let it happen. But he's been on the Texans' radar ever since. When Bill O'Brien was fired, everyone linked Caserio to the Texans' GM job. And rightfully so. This guy's incredibly smart, incredibly well respected. This is part of the reason why I said if you're Robert Kraft, you've got to get into Belichick's ear and say, hey, it's time for you to step aside. Again, I wasn't advocating for Kraft to fire Belichick. If Belichick really had his heart set on staying, fine. Keep him around. But now you've lost the heir apparent to Belichick on the front office side of things. And you've got to think that Caserio is going to target Josh McDaniels for Texans head coach. So you've lost the heir apparent for Belichick on the coaching side of things. Maybe that'll be Bill O'Brien. Maybe it'll be Matt Patricia. The Patriots will have no shortage of guys lining up to be Belichick's next right-hand man. But they really had this all ready to go, and they blew it. The Texans got their guy. You've got to give them credit. Also, there is another element to this. The Texans do hold their executive vice president of football operations, Jack Easterby, in very high regard. He was their interim GM. The Texans really like him. A lot of people thought he was going to get the Texans GM job if Caserio wanted to stay with the Patriots. But now it seems like the Texans are going to get to have their cake and eat it too. They get Caserio, and you've got to think that Caserio is going to keep Easterby around. The two of them work together with the Patriots. Usually I don't like it when teams try to duplicate the Patriots' way, but I really think this is going to work. Caserio was the white whale for the Texans. They wanted him for a long time. They finally got him. Caserio's probably going to keep a guy who they're really high on around in Jack Easterby. Easterby will probably be the top lieutenant. And you've got to think that Josh McDaniels is Caserio's A1 guy to be the next Texans head coach. This can work. There's no question about it. Moving on now to the saga of Chan Gailey. It keeps going. The fake Adam Schefter account fooled everyone on Monday when it said that Gailey was going to be fired. Then it was revealed to be a hoax. Yesterday, Flores announced that everyone was coming back, and now Gailey's resigning. So it is official. Chan Gailey resigned his post as Dolphins offensive coordinator. Brian Flores will be looking for his third offensive coordinator in 3 years. May God help us all. I don't know who ran that fake Schefter account, but he got this right. Is it a hoax if you're just too early to report something? It's like Tanya Roberts. She's dead. No, she's not dead. She's just in the hospital. Oh, wait, she's dead. Gailey's leaving the Dolphins. No, he's not. Oh, wait, yes, he is. 2021 is shaping up to be just as weird as 2020. That's all I have to say. Look, this is a good thing for the Dolphins. Gailey did a terrible job in handling Tua. He was way too conservative with him. He wouldn't unleash the beast. I said this on Monday. It's leading to calls for the Dolphins to move on from Tua. There are a lot of people calling for them to take either Justin Fields or Zach Wilson with the 3rd overall pick. Most likely Zach Wilson, because I think Lawrence and Fields are going to go 1-2. And yes, it is official with Trevor Lawrence. He did declare for the NFL draft. He can still be a Jet. The Jets could move up one spot. If the Jaguars go and pay Urban Meyer all that money, they're amenable to moving down one spot. That's what that tells me. But going back to Tua, the idea that the Dolphins are going to move on from him after 1 year is ridiculous. You've got to give him a chance with a good offensive coordinator. Chan Gailey is not a good offensive coordinator. And Brian Flores is terrible at picking his staff. This is 3rd offensive coordinator in 3 years. That's inexcusable. It would be one thing if they got head coaching jobs. Then you're doing something right. But he fired Chad O'Shea, replaced him with Gailey, a guy we had never worked with before. It predictably failed. Flores needs to get this hire right. It's just that simple. You can't afford to saddle Tua with another subpar offensive coordinator. Bill O'Brien would make sense. The two of them did work together with the Patriots. Anthony Lynn would make sense. He did a great job with Justin Herbert this year. It just doesn't seem like he's head coaching material. Made a lot of bad game management decisions. Hell, if you wanted to get really crazy, how about Tony Elliott, Clemson's offensive coordinator? That could be a 3D way to try to motivate the Jets to move up for Lawrence. The Dolphins do have the ammo to move up if they want to. They have 4 picks in the top 50 this year. If they hire Elliott, Trevor Lawrence's offensive coordinator, a lot of people are going to connect the dots that the Dolphins are looking to move up for Lawrence. In turn, that would motivate the Jets to up their eventual offer to the Jaguars to move up one spot. Meanwhile, the Dolphins can just sit back and say, hey, we never wanted Lawrence. We have Tua. We're pairing this hotshot young quarterback with this great offensive mind. We never wanted Lawrence. We just wanted to drive the price up. You've got to realize something. The off-season in the NFL is lying season. You're going to see a lot of reports that come out, and they're going to be nonsense. It wouldn't surprise me if the Dolphins tried to utilize that fact by hiring Elliott, which would make perfect sense, and then using it to motivate the Jets to up their offer to the Jaguars. Alright, now I'll give you some college basketball Valk talk. And I'll start with the game that I previewed yesterday Rutgers, Michigan State. A game that I was incredibly surprised to watch. I thought this game would be closer. I thought it would be a shootout. Instead, Rutgers couldn't put the ball in the ocean. They lost 68-45. Give MSU credit, they played solid defense. But there's no excuse for a Rutgers team that lives and dies by its offense to only shoot 30% from the field, 25% from beyond the arc, 35% from the charity stripe, and to get out-rebounded 43-21. They got doubled up in rebounds. This was a terrible performance by Geo Baker. Only shot 2 for 7 from the field. Paul Mulcahy, coming off the bench, shot 2 for 8 from the field. Ron Harper underachieved. Jacob Young underachieved. I understand that any team can have an off night, but when you're going up against another ranked team, you've got to do better than that. Rutgers severely disappointed yesterday. On the other side of the equation, Michigan State did exactly what you wanted them to do. Did I expect them to score more than 68 points? The answer is yes, but they shot 47% from the field, 43% from beyond the arc. Aaron Henry had a fantastic game. 20 points, 8 rebounds, 2 steals, and 4 blocks. Joey Hauser grabbed every loose ball in sight. He had 14 rebounds. Joshua Langford had 11 points. Rocket Watts off the bench had 11 points. I thought the depth for MSU would carry them to victory yesterday. It wasn't the depth that carried them to victory. It was really good defensive play and the fact that Rutgers couldn't even convert on open looks. This was a bad job by Steve Picciel. It's something that they've got to get sorted out quickly. You can't just beat up on the weaker teams. You've got to beat the strong teams in the Big Ten. And this is a really good Big Ten this year. They've got some really good teams. Minnesota, Michigan, Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois. It's not enough to just pick on teams like Purdue and Indiana and Northwestern and Maryland. You've got to be able to hang with the big boys. This loss would bug me if I was a Rutgers fan. Moving on now to Missouri, Mississippi State. And you've got to give Ben Howland a ton of credit. Howland's a very underrated coach. I don't think he gets the credit he should with what he's done with the Bulldogs. But yesterday proved how great of a coach he really is. Mississippi State is down 12 at the half. They couldn't get anything going against the Tigers. DJ Stewart only had 4 points. They had 8 turnovers. They shot 35% from the field in the first 20 minutes. They were dead to the world. Then Howland rallied the troops. And Mississippi State was fantastic. The penetration that they got was incredible. They only attempted 6 threes yesterday. And still managed to win by 15. They outscored Missouri 51-24 in the second half. Stewart was driving by defenders. Iverson Molinar was driving by defenders. Tolu Smith on the glass was really good. It was a really good job by Mississippi State to see that deficit and not go, we have to shoot threes to get ourselves out of this. No. Chip away at the lead with 2-pointers. They went on a 15-0 run at one point. They were able to get to the free throw line a lot. They hit 19 of their 21 free throws. They out-rebounded Missouri 32-18. They shot 52% from the field. This was a great win for Mississippi State. I don't know if they're going to get an invite to the big dance or if they're going to have to settle for the NITs, but I do know this. Whatever team they go up against, you're in for a dogfight. This is a team that knows how to make adjustments, that can beat you in a variety of ways. Mississippi State doesn't shoot a lot of threes, but when they do, they're effective. They're 37th in the nation at three-point percentage. They're a throwback team. I like watching them play, and I love Ben Howland. This was a really good win for Mississippi State. As for Missouri, this was a tough loss. Like I said, they had the Bulldogs dead to the world. And then they just got complacent. They were up 14 early in the second half. Then Mississippi State went on a 15-0 run. Next thing you know, you're losing. It wasn't an awful game for Missouri. They played really well in the first half. Their big guns did show up for the most part. Jeremiah Tillman, Xavier Pinson, and Drew Smith each scored in the double digits. But they just flat out fell apart defensively. Missouri is vulnerable to that. They really don't have a true defensive stopper. Drew Smith has very active hands, but that's really the only way that he can defend you. I wouldn't be banging tables over this loss if I was a Missouri fan. It's certainly not a great look, but I didn't think they were bad yesterday. They played their game. Quanzo Martin just got out-coached by a better coach in Howland. But now it's time to preview tonight's game between two ranked teams, Minnesota versus Michigan. Whatever the over-under is on this game, take the over. I know I said that yesterday, and I don't know what the over-under was on Rutgers MSU, but it certainly wasn't the shootout that I thought it would be. This game, the over-under is 150. Take the over. I know that sounds high. It's not. These are two teams that can shoot the lights out. Marcus Carr is one of the best scorers in the nation. He's averaging just over 22 points per game, 4 rebounds per game, and just under 6 assists per game. You combine that with guys like Liam Robbins, both Gok, and Gabe Kalsher. I'm sure I butchered a couple of those names. This is a Golden Gophers team that can match up with anyone offensively. And the thing that Richard Pitino has done so well this year is convince his guys to take contact. Don't be afraid to get hit. Drive to the hoop, force the officials to make a call, and it'll go your way. Minnesota has made just over 21.5 free throws this year per game. They've attempted just over 28.5 free throws per game. The makes are first in the nation. The attempts are second in the nation. They can beat you in a variety of ways. You've got to be on your toes if you're Michigan. But I do think Juwan Howard will have his team ready to go toe-to-toe with the Golden Gophers. I've been really impressed with what Howard's done in a very short period of time. Again, they can shoot the lights out. Hunter Dickinson usually comes off the bench. He's their leading scorer. He's averaging just under 17 points per game and just over 8 rebounds per game. He's a beast on the interior also. He's averaging over 1.5 blocks per game. He's got a future in the NBA as an old school center, let me tell you. Isaiah Livers is a really good, experienced senior. Franz Wagner is another really good player. I think he's Mo's brother. Don't quote me on that, though. Eli Brooks is an underrated player. Sean D. Brown is another really good bench piece for the Wolverines. Mike Smith is solid. This is a scary Michigan team. They've got a ton of experience. Their average years of experience is 2.2. Usually you see like 1.5 or 1, something like that. To see a team composed primarily of seniors, Michigan's going to be a tough out this year. I'll say what I said yesterday. It wouldn't stun me if Minnesota won this game. But I do think Michigan has it. I do think their depth is going to be too much. Give me the Wolverines. Alright, now I'll give you some MLB Valk talk. And I'll start with the Tigers signing Robbie Grossman to a 2-year deal worth $10 million. And I don't mind this move for the Tigers in a bubble. Grossman is a really good backup outfielder. He usually hits 240. Not too much power, but he gets on base at a decent clip. Plays solid defense, solid speed. He's a good player to have around. He goes out there, does his job, and doesn't embarrass himself. Here's what I don't like about this move, though. The Tigers are probably gonna have him starting. Their outfield is probably gonna be Daz Cameron, Grossman, and Victor Reyes. Maybe Jacoby Jones instead of Cameron, but I'd be surprised if they kept Cameron on the bench. He's still one of their better prospects. He's not in their A tier of prospects, he's in their B tier. The Tigers are going with the youth movement. They're going to give Cameron a legitimate shot to see what he could do. Grossman as a backup outfielder is great. Grossman as a starter isn't. You can do a lot better. I like the idea of him reuniting with A.J. Hinch. Hinch managed Grossman when they were with the Astros. And before you say anything, Grossman was there before the sign stealing. This move could work. You just don't want him playing 140 games a season. Moving on now to the Dodgers, bringing back Blake Treinen on a 2-year deal worth $17.5 million. And this is a really good move for the Dodgers. Treinen was a big part of their bullpen last year. Was a solid setup guy for them. Went 3-3 with a 3.86 ERA. I understand in the NLCS and the World Series, he underwhelmed. There's no question. He's not a good playoff pitcher. Was bad for the Nationals in the playoffs, and was bad for the Athletics in the playoffs. But the Dodgers are used to paying pitchers that are good in the regular season, but not in the playoffs. Treinen will be fine. He'll continue to be Kenley Jansen's setup guy. He's a guy who's really got to right the ship, because he's usually been good in the playoffs. Last year, he was dreadful. In the NLDS, he was bad. In the World Series, he was bad. I don't mind the Dodgers running it back. They won the World Series. And all their relievers pitched well in the regular season. This is a fine move. I have no complaints with it. These guys just need to step up in the playoffs. All in all, this is a good job by the Dodgers. Made a ton of sense to bring him back. The contract is fair. But if they want to repeat, their bullpen needs to learn how to pitch under the bright lights. It's just that simple. Alright, now I'll give you some NHL Valk talk. And I'll start with the Blue Jackets giving Oliver Bjorkstrand a massive extension. His deal for this coming season didn't change, but starting next year, he'll be playing under a 5-year deal worth $27 million. That's $5.4 million a year. And I gotta tell you, this is a huge overpay for the Blue Jackets. Bjorkstrand is a talented player. I like him. Fun player to watch. But he just hasn't taken the leap that the Blue Jackets wanted him to take. In 17-18, he had 40 points. The year after that, he had 36. Last year, he had 36 in 49 games. I understand that. But let's extrapolate that out to an 82-game season. How many points does that mean he's going to have? If you actually do the math, it's 60. But watching him last year, did he strike you as a 60-point player? No one on the Blue Jackets last year even had 50 points. The idea that Bjorkstrand is going to get 55-60 is ridiculous. The Blue Jackets are taking a big risk here. I like Bjorkstrand. I like that he's locked up long term. But $5.4 million a year is just way, way, way too much for him. I can't endorse that. What I can endorse is the Predators signing Luke Kunin to a 2-year deal worth $4.6 million. That's more than fair for Kunin. I like him. He's gotten better every year he's been in the NHL. In the bubble last year for the Wild, he had 2 goals in 4 games. I thought it was a really good job by the Predators in trading Bonino for him. I understand they also gave up a second and a third, but they got a 4th back. And they got a lot younger. Kunin's future is a lot brighter than Bonino's. Nothing against Bonino, but long term, I'd rather have Cunnin. This move makes a ton of sense, really good bridge deal, and it wouldn't surprise me if down the line, David Poile signed him to a big contract. Until tomorrow, I am Jacob Valk saying that I have a recurring nightmare. The Lord says to me, "Sorry, Jacob, but I wanted to give you the word personally. You can't go to heaven because of the way you acted down on earth. But do you mind signing a dozen baseballs?"